Oh hey, Butts of Guitars, the hopeless guitar enthusiast here. Just enjoying a walk on a beautiful autumn day. Got my pumpkin spice latte and a slice of pumpkin loaf. It's been about 39 straight days of consuming pumpkin spice products, you know. Pumpkin spice a day till they yank the products away, that's what I say. Anyways, getting ready to give you another installment on this guitar fantasy fiction build. My last video, if you remember, I got the prep work done and sprayed most of the sanding sealer. And I filled you in on the history of the Jazzmaster model. Now in this video I'm going to give you some more guitar history, this time on Fender's International Color Series. A very brief but interesting time in the company's history. And also a very, very pivotal time for them indeed. If you remember in the last video, I think I was cleaning up shop, closing up the garage after successful day one of spraying and hoping to get a good night's sleep and do it all over again the next day. So thanks once again for joining me on this very niche asymmetrical long scale build. And today starts out like always with cleaning out the garage, mopping the floor, and setting up the spray booth. Now this guitar has been sitting overnight. It's got 4 full layers of sanding sealer on there. So we're going to sand this with a combination of 320 grits. I have a 3M purple back paper for the difficult areas. And then I use the sanding sponges on most of it because it's less aggressive. I still do break through to the bare wood at points here, so we're going to have to apply a few more coats of that nitrocellulose sanding sealer. Okay, we're back to the thin lacquer. So I got another great day for finishing guitars, and I have a pretty ambitious finishing schedule. You got to keep in mind, I have 2 other full guitars that I'm spraying in addition to this one, but I am highly motivated, and I'm going to say that nothing, absolutely nothing, is going to slow me down today. Well, almost nothing. So by this time you probably are like, okay, I get it. You spray a lot of sanding sealer. So I'm not going to show you all the coats that I spray unless there's something kind of interesting or I'm trying to fix a problem. But I just wanted everyone to see that a lot of coats of lacquer have to go into a guitar when you're finishing it. So this is going to end up being the 6th and final coat of sanding sealer. Now I actually probably could have put a few more coats on there. Usually needs 6 to 8 because keep in mind you're sanding a lot of this off the guitar, but we want to get that ash as level as possible. So as I mask off the fingerboard, preparing the neck for finishing, we're going to hit the 3-hour mark. And this is 3 hours of actual labor with my hands on this guitar. It's a little misleading because there's so much prep work involved, lots of planning. I've been ordering parts for months and kind of preparing for these builds for weeks. So there's a lot more time that goes into these guitars than just the labor I spend on them. So now that we have all 6 coats of sanding sealer, I'm going to do my final level sanding with the 320 sponge. Lacquer will fill in 320 grit scratches, so that's usually what I use in between coats. Now at this point, I was still heavily considering changing the finish on this guitar or putting this body aside for another build because I love the look of that ash grain and it's a one-piece body, so I really wanted to show that off. But I really need another guitar project, like I need a hole in my head, and I decided to just go through with my intended plan with the solid finish. I'm just too dedicated to the vision and I wanted to see it through. In my last video, I went over the history of the Fender Jazzmaster. Now, throughout this video, I'd like to give you the history of the international colors. Now, the international colors are really a blip on the radar in Fender's history, but the more and more I dive into researching them, the more and more I find out and the more questions I have. In fact, my research has really gotten out of proportion, and I'm thinking about making an entire video about these colors. Let me know if that's something you'd like to see. Warning. The following history segments will contain extremely esoteric guitar nerd content. This type of information may only appeal to the type of person who you would not want to sit next to at a dinner party. Discretionary listening is advised. So some of you might be yelling at your screens right now, what the hell's an international color? Well, if you settle down and stop your yelling, I'm about to tell you. In brief, the international colors were a set of custom color options offered by Fender by special order only for a limited time in 1981. For the most part, the guitars that Fender made during 1981 and this whole period were essentially just carryovers from the late 70s. And in general, the overall opinions of this era of manufacturing are not glowing. And that's why I think knowledge about these custom colors are often misconstrued. It comes from a time where people didn't really care what Fender was doing and they weren't really paying much attention. But soon people would start to pay attention. In 1981 was a huge turning point for Fender, and they began to take aggressive action at transferring the company's product line and image. The arrival of the international colors came nestled right at the end of the old guard, but right before the company would reemerge as a respectable guitar manufacturer. So in 1981, Fender issues a mid-year guitar and amps catalog with some new offerings. In that catalog, dated June of that year, there was a full page dedicated to custom colors available on most guitars and basses. This consisted of 9 new finish options. Now, 2 of these were variations on their classic Sunburst finish, Sienna and Cherry Sunburst. The remaining 7 were all solid non-metallic colors. Now, 2 of these, Cathay Black and Arctic White, were very close to the standard black and white finishes that Fender had already been offering. However, the remaining 5 finishes is where things start to get a little crazy. There was Morocco Red, Maui Blue, Monaco Yellow, Capri Orange, and in my opinion, one of the strangest choices for a guitar finish ever, Sahara Taupe, or as it's called by Mark Agnesi,
Candy Apple Beige as I call it,
and as it's pronounced by your Gen Z guitar influencers, Sahara Tuapi. Now, nowhere on this custom color page or anywhere in Fender's literature from this era can I find that this is referred to as the international colors, so I think this is a moniker that was applied later in reference to their exotic names. As the catalog example shows, this was most commonly applied to their flagship Stratocaster model. But these finishes were also found on the Telecaster, Precision Bass, and Jazz Bass. All the solid colors in this series would receive special appointments. a newly reinstated 3-ply white pickguard with black contrasting parts, and black plated pickguard screws. This is significant because standard production up to this point have been using all black plastic parts. So this is one of the first times we see Fender returning to the white plastic pickguard. Now, if you haven't noticed already, I'm kind of a huge guitar nerd, and over the past several months, I have been documenting as many original examples of the International Color Series as I can find. I have an Excel file that's logging serial numbers and features, and so far I've documented over 100 examples, but the research is ongoing. My goal was just to get a representation of the overall guitars produced. I was trying to find out how long were they produced? What were the most common colors? What's the rarest color? Were there any other models besides the big 4 I mentioned earlier that these colors were applied to? Now, more on that point later. But oddly enough, as soon as these finishes appear, they were gone. In fact, that June '81 catalog and then one other catalog intended for export to the Japan market are the only 2 pieces of Fender literature that I can find that feature these finishes. By the December '81 price list, most of these finishes disappeared. The only survivors were Sienna Sunburst, Cherry Sunburst, and Arctic White. These 3 finishes were offered through the rest of the CBS ownership until it was sold to private hands in March of 1985. So besides the guitars themselves, we don't really have much documentation to explain why these guitars even exist in the first place. So no big deal, right? Just a bunch of custom color options for the discerning player if they liked them well enough. And after all, Fender had been offering a wide variety of custom color options for years now, so this was just standard fare for them. The 80s were all about these wild, bold colors, right? Wrong, you're wrong! One of the many reasons I'm so fascinated with this color series is that they were so out of place for the time. You always gotta remember that custom colors had to be special ordered, and they didn't appeal to many players. This makes them rare. And I gotta tell you that the sunburst finish is the most desired finish on a guitar, hands down. When it comes to custom colors, as the styles changed, so did the offerings. On top of that, we've lost many rare vintage custom color examples to lacquer thinner and sandpaper throughout the years. And it's probably because the current owner at the time didn't like shell pink or Daphne blue. They wanted that traditional sunburst, or maybe the au natural look. Some of you may remember the look of real wood craze back from the 70s. You know, everyone was refinishing their basements in those cedar particle board wood panels. All the cars had those wood veneer dashboards. And stereo equipment, they all applied that sticky thin wood veneer to all of their products. Remember like all those stereo hi-fi ads and all those old 70s issues of Playboy? That somebody else told me about. You gotta keep in mind, in 1981, we were still very much in the hangover from the 70s. Yeah, black and white arguably were still in style. Everyone loved the traditional sunburst, but natural wood finishes were very much in vogue. Neon, fluorescence, that are commonly associated with the 80s, still weren't in the mainstream yet. The international colors may have fit in a bit better in the coming years, but at the time they stuck out like a sore thumb. Like Fender's infamous Antigua finish, a lot of people either loved it or they hated it. With the international colors, there wasn't a lot of in between. So what I have here is a brand new can of nitrocellulose-based white surfacer primer. Now this product is very, very thick, so we're probably going to have to upgrade to a larger needle, like a 1.8 millimeter. We're going to test on some scrap and get the gun dialed in. But what I really love about this product is that it's very opaque. It covers quickly, it dries fast, and it sands easily. So what we're going to do is after we get the gun dialed in, we're going to apply 1 coat over the ash. And then once it dries, we're going to sand fairly aggressively because we want to make sure all that grain gets filled properly. Then if we break through, we'll apply another coat and then sand that back before we apply our international color. So given the low odds that these colors could even exist at the time, then how did they ever come to be? Well, I can't find a definitive answer. In any of the interviews I've found, no Fender employee or executive seems to take responsibility. The more common hypothesis for their existence is that Fender was trying to find any way possible to push out old existing stock. Like I mentioned earlier, 1981 was a turning point for Fender. They were actively working on quality control, going back to their roots of their golden era and making guitars that players wanted again. This meant an overhaul to their product line, discontinuing old models and revitalizing classic designs. This meant anything that resembled the CBS era had to go. Large headstocks, 3-bolt necks, black plastic parts, all markers of the late 70s era production were to be phased out. The vast majority of the guitars finished in international colors are made with the same design elements as their late 70s counterparts. Even the serial numbers on all these guitars are from 78 or 79, even though they weren't first produced until very late 1980. I believe Fender was trying to find a way to move existing inventory, so they dressed up their old guitars in some wild colors and new parts. It was the proverbial lipstick on the pig. And even though in cartoons, pigs with lipstick on can sometimes look kinda sexy, there wasn't a prolonged attempt by Fender to offer these finishes. It was a flash in the pan. So what does this have to do with the Jazzmaster? Well, nothing at all actually. But if you remember in my previous video, I shared how the Jazzmaster was selling rather poorly throughout the 70s until it was finally removed from the price list in 1980. Examples from this time period are few and far between. I'm not sure how many were being made. I would really love to see a sales ledger from this time. I've always been fascinated by timelines. I'm not exactly sure where this stems from, but I love finding out how things began and how did they end. So I'm fascinated by the idea of finding the very last Jazzmaster. I'm not exactly sure how Fender was making their guitars, but I do know that in the late 70s, they had implemented a primitive CNC machine to begin milling out bodies. Fender was very successful at the time, selling up to 40,000 instruments a year. That's approximately 770 guitars and basses a week. Now, usually a company like this makes things in batches. With a high demand like that, I would assume they had stacks of raw wood bodies and necks and were making the guitars as fast as they could fill orders. I'm not sure about the Jazzmaster at this time. My guess is that these two were made in batches. Now, how many that is, I don't know. Is that 10 bodies and necks at a time? 40? 50? My hypothesis is that the last time Fender made a batch of Jazzmasters was in 1978. This appears to be the last serial numbers found on these guitars. Because orders were so slow for this model, they finished them off as the orders came in and probably decided at some point, like 1980, that it wasn't a viable model for them anymore, and once the supply dwindled, they discontinued the guitar. Or perhaps they were so rare that they only did make them one at a time. They just clipped the decal from a sheet of sequential 78 serial numbers and applied them to the neck at the time of building. I'm not exactly sure. But like any manufacturer, I'm sure there were stragglers lying around. Bodies and necks stashed away or put aside, temporarily forgotten about. Bins with an assortment of hardware and parts. After all, even if Fender discontinued a model, they were still obligated to honor warranty replacement parts and to have some on hand for customers. But because these final Jazzmasters were made with older parts, it's difficult to accurately identify the year when they left the factory. You have to look at the indirect clues to pinpoint the year. However, this was the same case for many of the instruments Fender was shipping at the time. Well into 1981 and even into 82, Fender was shipping factory new guitars with 78 and 79 serial numbers and parts. Many of the 79 Fenders you see were actually finished in 80 or 81. So knowing these facts, this is where my guitar fantasy fiction comes in. My hypothesis is that the international colors were an effort to clear out existing inventory in order to begin redesigning their guitars. And also discovering in my research that most of these guitars weren't made until very late 80 into early 81, before they were advertised to the general public, it is my assumption that Fender made the decision themselves to make these guitars before taking any orders. It's almost like they were thrust upon the market with no feedback from the buyers. Also, it's very possible that Fender made the very last Jazzmasters in 1980 with 78 serial numbers. I would think most Jazzmaster aficionados would agree with this. So now I have applied 2 coats of the white primer surfacer and sanded it level with the 320 sanding sponges. I now have complete coverage and I have the finish as close to level as I can. Just ash always has a tendency to creep into the color coat from the nitro sinking back. But now begins the fun part. We can begin mixing our international color base coat. All right, so here comes one of the fun parts. I have here pre-mixed Fiat orange, and what we did is we actually tried to color match this, and it's not exact, but it's pretty damn close. This is Capri Orange from my Gracie's nitrocellulose in a can. I actually probably have enough to do this, but I'd rather do it through my HVLP and kind of mix it custom. So this is just dipping that in there. It's a little bit lighter, you can tell, but close enough. So I have my guy at Resto Paint. He mixes up all these minus the urethane binder, so all the tints. So this is Fiat Orange, and it's got red shader, white, orange, scarlet, and black pigments that make up that orange color. And this is for a pint. I have him mix it like it's going to be mixed with the binder, but I have him leave it out because I'm going to mix in my own nitro tint base and make it a nitrocellulose orange pigmented lacquer. This is formulated for urethane. When I add lacquer, will it shift the color values a bit? Yes. Will it be significant? Maybe. I don't know. I'm just eyeballing it here. So don't try this at home. I'm going to say that many times. Now, I already calculate here 322.6 for the urethane base. All the shaders equal 185.8 grams. So that's 63% base to 37% tints. So almost basically 2/3 of this is going to be the base coat lacquer, and 1/3 of it is pigment. That's how it's going to be mixed up. So we use that as a base. We mix it right into here. That's going to be our full strength nitrocellulose orange lacquer, and then I thin it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tint base nitrocellulose, and I'm going to measure out 322.6 exactly. I mean, it could be a little bit off, of course. Mix that up here, and then dump that in to this orange and make this into a nitro lacquer. Again, don't try this at home. I would not advise this. This stuff is nasty. Just go to that Gracie's and I think it's Madison Music Store. Just, if you can, just buy that offline and just call it a day. Or go to Stu Mac or whoever else you want to go to. .322.8, pretty much spot on. Yeah, look at that. Look at that red. Make nitro lacquer. Oh, that's gonna go right to the frickin' top, man. Alright, this will be a little messy, I think. It is what it is. Instead of stirring it up for 1,000 years. Oh, it looks pretty good to me. Actually looks pretty close to ready to spray consistency, but we're going to do some tests first because that's what we do. We do tests. Always test on scrap. Let's get about six ounces in there. There it is. 8 ounces of nitrocellulose Fiat Orange. All right, we're going to spray a little bit on the test board here. So this test board is a white primer, not a gray primer, but this is the Capri Orange, so I'm going to spray it so I get a side-by-side comparison of it and just to see what the consistency is. So let's mask up and get this going.
This is always nerve-wracking. Okay, what was I doing? Okay, there.
All right, this is looking real good. I really like the color. The coverage is good, it's spraying nice. I'm just gonna wait a few minutes here just to make sure it flashes off, there's no blushing, everything's good. So this is the part of the build that I always wait for, and usually it goes by pretty fast. So you probably have figured that out already. I've chosen Capri Orange as the color of choice for the international color. Now, this really was a difficult choice. I also love Maui Blue. I really like the 5, as I call them, wacky colors. The yellow, the blue, the orange, the taupe, and the red. But I already did a Capri Orange in a Strat form. This is way back in like 2012, 2013. And I did the offset plastics and black-plated pickguard screws. And if you also notice, I wanted to try to custom mix this into the nitro lacquer, and I couldn't get the Capri Orange in a ready-to-spray form. They were only sold in pre-mixed cans, and I actually still had some of that left, as you saw. We couldn't find the original color code. I have since found the original color code. More on that in another video. But I had this mixed to the closest match, which was a Fiat Orange.
Arancio Bramante. Arancio Bramante.
Which translates roughly to orange longing or orange desire, something like that. And it was featured on the Fiat in the mid to late 2000s. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually spraying this color base coat kind of conservatively. I have a very tight fan and a not a lot of liquid coming through. So I just kind of wanted to tack up the primer so it would accept the finish. Then what we're going to do is we're going to set this body down for a few minutes, and then I'm going to pick it back up, open the fan pattern up a bit, open the needle up so there's more fluid, and even out the color. Because after this first pass, it looks kind of streaky and it looks kind of yellowish. Another thing that you're going to notice me doing is I'm going to match the headstock peg head color with the body color. This is something that they did on the Jazzmasters quite frequently in the 1960s, but by 1970, Fender was done with the practice of matching the headstock, and pretty much no Jazzmasters from that era have matching headstocks. And it's something that's kind of just a custom touch of mine, and I'm going to indulge myself and match the headstock here. But it's definitely not accurate. And ultimately, this guitar is my fantasy, so I can kind of do with it whatever I want. And yes, you can point out the inaccuracies. I go to great lengths to try to make stuff period accurate and then just completely ignore other things just because I don't want to do it that way. For instance, I'm using all nitro lacquer, and yes, at this time they would have been using a thick polyurethane or polyester, but I'm only going to use nitro because this has been settled. Nitro is the superior finish. It has better tone. You can't even debate me on it. It's not open for debate. We settled this in the forums. However, I will allow you to roast me for going to great lengths to recreate a guitar from not the golden era of Fender, but their kind of crappy end of the CBS period. So the irony is definitely not lost on me. Now let's get back to where I left off with the history of the late era Jazzmasters. But of course, this is where things get hazy. I'm not sure when the last original Fender Jazzmaster was put together, but it may be this one that was documented heavily on the Offset Guitars forum. It's apparently a one-off built for a longtime Fender employee with leftover parts in 1982. It has what appears to be a Strat-like neck, but the guitar does look legit. And remember earlier in my rant when I proposed the question, were there any other models besides the big four that were finished in international colors? Well, the answer is yes, sort of. I've been able to find a handful of examples that don't fit in with the usual bunch. First are the variations on the Telecaster model. I have been able to find 2 examples of the Telecaster Custom, one in Monaco Yellow and the other in Maui Blue. I was also able to find a Telecaster Deluxe in Maui Blue. Oddly enough, there's a Telecaster bass that supposedly has a 73 body and a 78 serial neck, but appears to be a factory original Morocco Red. May not be legit, but not unusual for factory oddballs like this to have dates with mismatched years. I also found a recent listing for a lead model in Maui Blue, and the lead also appears in that 81 catalog finished in Monaco Yellow. But one of the most interesting cases would be the Mustang. It had been years since the Mustang was offered in a solid red finish, and the last being offered in black and wine, which is a transparent finish. This looks legit, but is it actually Morocco Red? But there are rumblings that other international color Mustangs do exist, but I have not turned up any hard evidence. If true, that means colors were used on what we consider the offset body style and could have been applied to any model. Now the Telecaster Deluxe, Telecaster Custom, and Mustang would all be discontinued in 1981. And that aforementioned Telecaster bass, that was discontinued in 1979. So you probably know what I'm getting at here. Fender made these international colors in late 80 into 81 using parts from 78 and 79, and they are found on most of their guitar models. It appears that they were trying to clear out old stock. Many of these guitars were soon to be discontinued or would receive cosmetic changes. They also supposedly had Jazzmasters as late as 82. What is the possibility that at least one, just one, Jazzmaster left the factory in early 81 in an international color? This guitar is my white whale. While very unlikely, it is at the same time very plausible given the circumstances I presented. Since then, the international colors have made a return across many of Fender's product lines, most notably on guitars made in Japan, where I think they had a little more success. Most recently, a near-complete line of reissues were made in late 2022 and 2023. But as of the making of this video in late 2025, there are still new unsold stock at music stores featuring this limited run of colors, just going to show how polarizing these finishes are. And yes, the Jazzmaster has since been issued in international colors in some form or another, and even by the custom shop, but never have I seen someone try to recreate it with the specs that an original could have worn in 1980. So I hope this gives you a better context of what this build is really all about. It is a labor of love to recreate something that may exist, hiding out there somewhere. But until I can find it, I'm going to scratch that itch and build one of my own. So just a little recap today. Good spraying weather. And as always, I start late. I didn't get all the prep done in time. I slept in about an hour later than I wanted to. But despite all that, I have to say, even though I didn't get to nearly all the things I wanted to, I have to say today's a success. And I always put a lot on my shoulders. So took a longer time than I thought to get the body sealed up. So I had to do a little bit more sealing. 2 rounds of primer, but was doing prep work on the necks. Figured to cut it off. I still had still probably good. I could probably spray till 10 o'clock tonight. The weather's really great today. But I wanted to cut off at a decent hour. I haven't really eaten anything today very much. So I kind of would like to get dinner, but whatever. But anyways, my recap is finish the sanding sealer, primed 2 coats over, and got the orange color coat on the offset long scale and matched the headstock. I thought it was sealed a bit better than it was, so the wood grain's kind of popping through, but it's fine. It's covered in color. So I have work tomorrow. It's Monday, but I'm going to be working from home, so hopefully I can prep, and then as soon as I'm done with work, the weather should be hot still. It's supposed to get up to like 72, and then spray in the evening, and then hopefully Saturday and Sunday do as much spraying as possible, and then we're getting close to the end of October. So good day. I actually listened to what I haven't tapped in. I try to listen to CDs. Nuggets Volume 2 CD 1. That's the CD box set. I really love that. And because I'm wearing my Jump cover band, Van Halen cover band, I pulled out 1984. It's the first time I listened to that in probably 20 years maybe. And then I didn't get to the meters, though, unfortunately. I'll have to play them next time. But I was listening to Van Halen. I just have, it's one of those albums, like Dark Side, it's just, it's a great album. It's a classic. But you hear it so much, you're just so sick. I'm not a huge Van Halen fan either. But I like them. I like them all right. I like Fair Warning better. But I was listening to it, and I'm like, oh, there must be something wrong with the settings on my boombox. This mix is all synth. So that mix is probably 20-something years old, so maybe Eddie was having a beef with Dave at the time, and because it's all solos and synths, and the vocals are almost in the background. I thought it was on some messed up surround setting. That's funny. Anyways, I got some orange lacquer left over. Today was a success. Tomorrow and rest of the night, probably getting dinner, and then up till midnight tonight doing prep work. So fun times. So I've been hard at work editing these videos for your viewing pleasure. I hope you're enjoying them. I know they're getting pretty nerdy, so thanks for hanging in there with me. I just got in for a few hours of yard work. Got a half acre of leaves to contend with, but I'm treating myself here to some pumpkin spice flavored hot cocoa, and instead of marshmallows, I'm putting in these pumpkin shaped little candies in there. It's basically candy corn, the pure sugar. Delicioso. That's the French or Italians say, I don't know who says that. But anyways, I'm doing ongoing research on the international colors and the late era Jazzmasters, as you probably have noticed. And what I like to do is pull up some of these YouTube videos, and I like looking at the Norman's Rare Guitars Guitar of the Day videos, because every once in a while they'll show an international color or a late era Jazzmaster. So I have an old video pulled up right now with Mark Agnesi, where they're going to show off what they claim is a 1979 Jazzmaster. So I want to just look at this and pick up some details for reference on this current build that I'm doing.
It's been a while since we've done some hipster stuff. This is that. Come on back.
I'm not a hipster.
This is from 1979. This is like one of the very last Fender Jazzmasters. Original Sienna sunburst finish with black plastic parts, binding and blocks on the neck, and the original plastic molded Jazzmaster case.
Wow.
Oh, like every hipster in Silver Lake in Brooklyn just creaming their jeans right now. So ugly, it's so rad.
I know I did.
Ew. It's pretty cool though. I kind of like it.
Cool case.
I'm a hipster.
Clean.
I mean, let's just look at this finish for a second.
Yeah, let's look at the finish.
Goes to this, it's like a poopy brown sunburst almost.
Turn it around again. Right.
A poopy brown.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I want to make a comment here. He calls this a Sienna sunburst. Now, it's kind of a ubiquitous term to call any sunburst from this era Fender Sienna sunburst, and it really isn't true. If you look at that original custom color chart that I've shown 1,000 times already, Sienna sunburst looks to be three-tone on that sheet. I can't get an original copy. I've been trying to. If you have one, please send it to me. But it actually, I think, is a two-tone sunburst. It's kind of like an orangish amberish sunburst. There's multiple sunbursts from this area. So not just the Sienna and Cherry sunburst that's on the international color chart, but they had a tobacco sunburst, they had a brown sunburst, and it's hard to pinpoint what they are, but I think the regular three-tone sunbursts all have this kind of very brown edge. So usually more towards black, like a Salem shader is what they call it, which is a brown and black mix. A lot of the 70s ones look straight black, but this one definitely looks brown, but it's kind of accurate for that era.
But very cool. Jazzmasters start 1958. They go through 1980. This is one of the latest ones I've ever seen. This is the first time I've actually ever seen like the molded style case for a Jazzmaster. They must have only made this literally for like 1 or 2 years in this case.
Yeah, from the listings I've seen, they've all had, most of them had the molded cases. In the late 70s went to these molded cases, and I think the original ones had the kind of burgundy plush interior, but this thing looks so cool. I don't know.
The first time I've actually ever seen like the molded style case for a Jazzmaster. They must have only made this literally for like 1 or 2 years.
Guys, I think I gotta find this case for this build. I might be crazy, but I really would like to find this case.
Years in this case. But the guitar, fantastically clean, man.
So looking at the guitar, we can see black pick guard as indicative of this era, ash body. It's got the Strat knobs on it again. They abandoned the witch hats, I think around 78, because I see them into the black guard era. Sometimes I've seen torque guards, but it has all the features a late era sunburst would have. But the thing about this particular one is that finish that it refers to as Sienna, I don't think the brown edge came until at the very earliest 1980. And they're kind of on the Fenders from like 81, maybe even to 83. So I would really, really like to pop the hood of this guitar and really see if there's a body marking or a date, or look at the pot codes, because if this might be an late 80 or 81 Jazzmaster, I would love to get a hold of one of these and open them up to see kind of what era they were actually made, if they have any date stampings at all. It's super cool. I'm going to take some of the references here. I'm kind of keeping the black pickguard example. I know the international colors have the white pickguards with the black plastic pickup covers. I do like how that black pickguard looks. It's kind of unique to that era. By the way, whatever happened to this Mark Agnesi guy? He used to do these Guitar of the Days like every day. I haven't seen him in years. I don't know what's happened to him. Maybe he didn't pull through. So I think in the next video, we're going to go a little bit more into selecting the parts and getting the final build assembled as it's going to be. We're going to get into the clear coat finishing and some of the final assembly. So thank you so much for sticking around on this international custom color fantasy build.
Let's get